Let's talk about a quiet street in Dubai's Al Karama neighborhood. Inside a modest two-story house, a family had built what looked like a perfect life, but that life was about to be completely shattered. This is a story about how tradition, betrayal, and desperation can collide with deadly results. Okay, so picture this. It's 8:47 p.m. on March 14th, 2016. An emergency call comes in. The voice on the other end is panicked, breathless, and it belongs to a man named Lena Al-Manssuri, someone known for always keeping his cool. This single, frantic call for help was the very first thread of a lie that was about to unravel spectacularly. And here's the thing. In the background of that call, you could hear a woman's voice repeating over and over. It was an accident. But investigators would soon find out that the truth was way more complicated and a whole lot more violent. The real question was, what really happened in that kitchen? When the police showed up, the family had a story ready to go. It was a very clear and, on the surface, a pretty straightforward story that explained all the horror away as just a simple, tragic mishap. You can just imagine the scene, right? It's absolute chaos. Paramedics find Rami cradling the lifeless body of their domestic worker, a 28-year-old woman named Rosa Santos. The family's explanation? She'd slipped on a wet floor while cleaning and, tragically, fell right onto a knife that was left on the cutting board. It sounds plausible, doesn't it? A horrible, tragic accident. But to really get what happened here, we've got to go back, way back. Because this story doesn't start with that emergency call. Nope. It started 25 years earlier, with a marriage that was built on tradition and the relentless pressure to look perfect. See, the Al-Manssuris, they were that family. You know the type, the picture of respectability. Rami was a government clerk with his own little textile business on the side. His wife, Lena, was basically a pillar of the community, always volunteering, always organizing charity events. They had built a life that everyone around them really admired. They'd been married for a quarter of a century. It started out as a traditional arranged marriage, way back in 1991. And over those 2.5 decades, it seemed to have settled in to a really comfortable, respectful partnership. 25 years of building a life, a family, and a reputation. And they had 3 amazing daughters. Miriam, who was a teacher, Ela, a business student, and the youngest, Simi, who was the artistic one. They were, by all accounts, a huge source of pride for the family. But, and this is the crucial part, there was one thing missing. Despite how much they loved their daughters, the cultural pressure on Rami to have a son, a male heir, was just immense. And for Lena, this was this constant, quiet source of pain, a feeling that in this one absolutely critical way, she had failed as a wife. It's into this pressure cooker of a home that a new domestic worker arrives. And Lena's growing suspicion about her wasn't just paranoia. Oh no, it was based on a long, painful history of her husband's cheating. Rosa Santos was not like the other maids they'd had. She was hired in January 2016. She was confident, she was intelligent, and she was ambitious. She was working in Dubai to send money back to her family's struggling farm in the Philippines. But she didn't just keep her head down. She was learning Arabic, asking questions, engaging with the family in a way that felt like way more than just an employee. It was clear she was positioning herself for something more. You see, Lena had a system for dealing with this kind of thing. It wasn't the first time Rami had strayed. Back in 2003, she quietly dismissed an Indonesian maid. In 2008, she brought in the whole family to handle an affair with a cleaner. She was actually pretty skilled at managing these threats discreetly, but Rosa was different. She wasn't just a temptation, she was a threat of total replacement. So over the next few months, Lena's intuition turned into this quiet obsession. She started noticing things, unexplained cash withdrawals from their account, receipts for jewelry she never got, and just the subtle, intimate way her husband and Rosa interacted. She knew. She just needed proof. And then she got it. She came home early from a meeting and walked right in on this scene of pure, intimate joy. She heard Rosa whisper to Rami that she was 3 months pregnant, and she saw a look on her husband's face, a look of happiness she hadn't seen in their entire 25 years of marriage. So just try to imagine what was going through Lena's mind. After 25 years of marriage, she was the wife who had failed to provide a son. And in just 3 months, Rosa, the maid, was pregnant with the heir. This wasn't just another affair. This was a hostile takeover of her entire life. The final, devastating blow came just one day before the murder. Lena was in her garden when she overheard Rosa on the phone with a friend. She was ecstatic. The ultrasound had revealed the baby's gender. It was a boy, a healthy baby boy. It was the son Rami had always wanted. For Lena, the future was suddenly terrifyingly clear.
All right, let's jump back to the crime scene, because that whole carefully crafted story about a terrible accident, it was about to completely fall apart under the cold, hard lens of forensic science.
So how did the lie unravel? Well, first there was the story, a slip and fall, but forensics basically said, no way. The angle of the wound was all wrong for a fall, and Rosa had defensive scratches on her hands, which proved she tried to fight back. Then came the text messages between Rami and Rosa, spelling out the affair and the pregnancy. The final nail in the coffin, testimony from Rosa's friend, confirming everything. The whole story just collapsed. In the interrogation room, faced with undeniable proof, Lena's composure finally just broke. Through tears, she confessed everything. She described the final horrible confrontation in the kitchen, and the words from Rosa that pushed her over the edge, that she could give Rami the son Lena never could. In that one moment, 25 years of pain just crystallized into murderous rage. The trial that followed absolutely captivated Dubai. It was this perfect storm of modern law clashing with traditional cultural pressures, and the outcome would be an attempt to find some measure of justice in a tragedy that had no simple answers. And the jury's verdict was nuanced. They found Lena not guilty of first-degree murder, which was a way of acknowledging the extreme provocations she'd been through. However, they did find her guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter, and also guilty of tampering with evidence and filing a false report. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in prison. It was a sentence that really reflected both the severity of taking a life, but also showed an understanding of the immense cultural and psychological pressures that led to that final violent act. The Al-Manssuri family's perfect facade was shattered forever. Their name was ruined. But out of this awful tragedy, some real, meaningful change did come. Rosa's death became a catalyst, and it led to new laws and better legal protections for the UAE's huge and vulnerable domestic worker population. In the end, the case of the house on Al-Karamama Street really forces us to ask a difficult question. A verdict was reached, a sentence was served. But where does true justice lie? Is it only in the punishment handed down by a court, or is it also found in our ability to understand the deep, complex, and painful human emotions that can drive an ordinary person to do the unthinkable?